So if you're a woman working in tech, or you're hoping to be, what kind of salary can you actually expect in 2025? Today on The Explainer, we're going to cut through all the noise and look at the hard numbers, and that persistent pay gap that's costing women thousands.
Let's start with a number you've probably heard before, 82 cents. It's kind of the go-to statistic for the gender pay gap, right? But as we're about to see, that one single number, it hides a much more complicated, and in some cases, a much worse reality.
For every single dollar a man earns in a tech role, a woman in a similar position makes just 82 cents. Now, think about that over a whole year. It adds up to a staggering difference in median salary. We're talking nearly $25,000.
Okay, but what does that really mean for your paycheck? And is that gap the same for absolutely everyone? Like, how does it change depending on your specific job, the city you live in, or even how far along you are in your career? Let's break down the data to find out.
First up, let's look at the overall trend. And unfortunately, the progress that we all thought we were making, well, it seems to have started to reverse.
Yeah, you heard that right. After years of slow but steady progress, the gap is actually getting worse. This is the second year in a row that the earnings ratio has declined. It slipped from about 82.7% down to 80.9%. That recent reversal makes understanding all the forces at play more critical than ever.
So what does this all mean in terms of actual dollars? Let's take a look at the salary ranges women can expect to see as they move through their careers in tech, all the way from their very first job to the executive suite.
For women who are just starting out in the industry, salaries typically fall somewhere between $75,000 and $130,000. Now, of course, that's a pretty wide range, and it can vary a lot based on the role, the company, and whether you're in a super high-demand specialization.
With a few years of solid experience under your belt, that earning potential grows significantly. At the mid-level, salaries often push right past that $100,000 mark and can go as high as $200,000 for skilled professionals. And this is where compensation becomes highly competitive. Women in senior technical roles, like principal software engineers or product managers, can command salaries well into the 300s.
Then you get to the very top, and the earning potential is just immense. For executive and principal level roles, we are talking base salaries that start at $300,000, and total compensation packages that can easily fly past $400,000 when you factor in all the bonuses and equity.
But here's where it gets complicated. That 82-cent average hides some huge variations. See, the pay gap isn't the same for everyone. It changes dramatically depending on the specific job you do. Just take a look at this breakdown by role. For software quality assurance analysts, the gap is almost non-existent. Women earn 98 cents for every dollar a man makes. But for database administrators, it's a chasm. Women are earning just 73 cents on the dollar. And the gap becomes even more pronounced when we start looking at the intersection of gender and race. In STEM, the highest earners are Asian men, with a median salary over $103,000. For Black and Hispanic women, that median drops all the way to just $57,000. That is a massive difference.
You know, your location also makes a huge difference. While the big tech hubs like San Francisco and Seattle have the highest salaries, they also have pretty big pay gaps. But then there's Nevada, a surprising outlier, where on average, women engineers actually earn more than men.
So with all this data, the obvious question is, why is this still happening? Let's dig into some of the systemic hurdles that keep this gap in place. A key factor that researchers have identified is something called the broken rung. Think of it as that critical first step up into management. For whatever reason, far fewer women get this promotion, which creates a bottleneck that limits the pipeline of women rising into senior, higher-paying leadership roles down the line. And that whole pipeline issue starts right at the very beginning. When you look at the salary data for entry-level jobs, women only make up 22% of the pool. This underrepresentation, it just gets worse at every single level of seniority.
But it's not just about the pipeline. There's clear evidence of bias in the offers themselves. For over 60% of jobs in tech, companies offer men higher salaries than they offer women for the exact same role.
So, knowing all of this, how do you navigate it? Let's talk about some concrete strategies you can use to take control and maximize your own earnings. The single biggest lever you have is specialization. Focusing on these high-demand, high-growth fields like AI, cloud architecture, and cybersecurity, where talent is incredibly scarce. That gives you immense bargaining power. Here's a 3-step playbook. First, do your homework. Use sites like levels.fyi to see what people in similar roles are actually making. Second, develop those in-demand skills. Getting a certification in a hot area like AI or cloud can add a 15 to 20% boost to your salary. And finally, negotiate strategically. Never give your past salary. Instead, flip the script and ask them for the approved salary range for the position. It puts you in a much stronger position.
But even with the best strategies, we have to acknowledge the cultural headwinds. A staggering 70% of women in tech report feeling that they have to work harder than their male colleagues just to prove themselves. This isn't just a numbers problem, it's a cultural one.
And that leaves us with a final, forward-looking question. We're in a period of massive change, with the explosion of AI and the normalization of remote work. Will these forces, combined with the right strategies, finally be enough to break down these systemic barriers and close the gap for good?